This is a video on how to work with 3D form in After Effects. It's specifically about how to use the curvature function on existing compositions. So, for example, here I have a composition. Notice that the composition is actually quite long. It's not a standard 1920 by 1080 composition. I've made it kind of extended long, and I've just made a simple animation that's like that. And I can bring that composition into another composition. And so here I have taken that composition and I have made it dimensional in the Cinema 4D renderer and given it turned it into a 3D layer. Also lit it with a parallel light. And I'll show you how this is done in a second, but just so these things can be shown first without the rendering. And then they are kind of turning the canvas that they are on is curved, and so the animation is then kind of turned into 3D space. Here is another example of how that can work. I've used the same graphic using the same parallel light, and I've also added a curvature to it, but I've doubled it. So I have one layer here and mirrored it over there. And this time, instead of having it super curved, I've kept it with only 4 curvature segments. We'll look at that in a second. And then, since they're mirrored, you kind of get, and they're low, there's only 4 curved segments in it, you kind of get a almost square, almost flat version of a 3-dimensional form. Okay, so these are some effects that you can get. Let's just see how they're built. All right, so here I have the same setup. I have a parallel light. I have a composition brought in, and then here I have the double compositions brought in. And what I'll do is I will build these before you, now that you've seen the final effect. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring in this composition 5. And that's essentially the one you've seen. And it's taking a little time because the render has been working extra hard today. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this into a 3D layer. And I'm going to give us 2 views so we can kind of see what's going on. So this particular flat object is right here. Now you'll see once I've made it 3D, you'll get a geometry options, just like you do in when you're working with extrusion. And then here we'll have curvature. And I'm going to take curvature and I'm just going to basically turn it to 100%. And what that's going to do is it's going to actually show, it's going to turn it into like a half a circle. And just like everything else, I can scale it down. I'm going to scale it down so it fits and that it's in front of this segment. And you can see, I think this one will render pretty quickly. I won't let it go all the way. So it's kind of showing some dimensional form, you know, see it's bigger, it's getting a little smaller. And it's basically taking this arc. Now, that is fine, but it's not showing me that much. So let's play with its options a little bit more. Let's go down here into this Comp 5, which is the one that we are currently working on. So we have the transform function, and then we have the geometry option. So right now the curve's at 100%, but it's only at 4, so it's a little jagged. I can also turn that up so it has more segments, and that's going to round that out. I can also get a slightly different point of view by using the transform. So I'm going to turn I'll do the X orientation, I'll rotate it a little bit. so I can see, yeah, there we go. So now it's kind of actually making an arc. So that's actually going to show you a little bit more what an arc would look like. Of course, the render time is going up because I'm being more complex. So I'm not going to totally wait for it, but I think you can get the idea that it's going to complete like a half circle. Now, what I want to do is actually kind of mirror it. So I'm going to, that's a good stop, but I'm going to back up. I'm going to back up. So this is before I have tilted it. So I'm going to take this layer and duplicate it. And so now this layer exists twice. I'm going to sit and turn this green, so it's the Y rotation. So I'm going to turn this around to 180. So now I have two of these, and they are starting at different places. And kind of chasing each other. Now, I can see that this isn't really showcasing exactly the dimensionality of it. So what I can do is go into I'm going to take both of these guys, and I want to, now that they're kind of positioned in something that I kind of like, I don't want to ruin it. So I'm going to group these according to a null object. So let me go ahead and start. I'm going to do a new null object. And remember, a null object allows you to control like multiple things or complex things. It's pretty easy. So I'm going to turn this null object here. These two comp5s that I just made, I'm going to lasso them up to this. So they're now parented by this null object, which is a 3D object. So since the null object kind of groups them together, now I can go to this and I'm going to play with the X orientation and just rotate it a little bit so you can kind of see what that is going to look like. And maybe to make it even more visible is I'm going to grab both of them and scale them down in the null object so that they are contained a little bit more in the viewport. All right, so let's see, it'll take a bit to render just because I'm asking a lot with all the lighting. But you can see this is how you would use curvature with existing graphics to create dimensional animations in After Effects. And yes, I'm waiting for this to render so you can see it. There we go. Nice. I'm sure we can change it by changing the different kinds of lighting, using different kind of colors, so you could get a lot of different effects, and also maybe even casting shadows onto the background.